Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host Brian Keane, online fitness coach, 4-time best-selling author and nutritionist, here to help you normally by deconstructing expert guests on all things health, fitness and mindset. But today's episode is a solo Q&A, the first one in a while. I had a minty meeting last week with Chris, who was asking about the Q&As. He goes, you haven't done one in a while. So I said, you know what, Chris, I'll actually do one for next week. So all on Chris. So if you're listening, mate, appreciate the idea. And in today's episode, we're going to run through running/gym training splits, supplements for cortisol, cardio for fat loss versus health, different physiques but at the same weight, and sugar cravings during the day. Today's podcast is also sponsored by my Keane Edge group coaching program. So if you want to work with me in a program, there's 20 spaces. I've changed this program because it's group coaching, a lot of changes, alterations needed. So it's 6 weeks coaching with me in that challenge. The link will be in the description below if you want to check it out. But let's jump in straight to today's first question. What's your training split while running? I'm going to answer this from two angles because what I recommend and what I do isn't always the same, although there's crossover. So I need to give a little bit of context here to what I'm training for over the coming months, and then I'll break down my training split and then what I recommend versus where you need to adjust it yourself. So at the minute, I have a High Rocks race in Rome at the end of September. And for anyone unfamiliar with High Rocks, it's a kilometer run with circuits basically in between. So sled push, sled pull, skier, rower, and then you do a kilometer run, and there's basically a circuit or an exercise in between to break it up. And at the minute, most of my training and most of my running is in and around the gym and pairing kilometer runs or 500 meter fast runs with a circuit. So if you're on my Instagram stories, Brian_Keane_fitness, and I'm putting up these workouts or some of these workouts, you'll see that there's a combination. It's a run with an exercise. It's another run with another exercise, a run with another exercise. So it might be a kilometer run with a sled push. It might be a kilometer run with some wall balls. It might be a kilometer run with some burpee broad jumps to keep the movement patterns from the race. So I tend to reverse engineer my training based on whatever outcome I'm looking to achieve. So for me, it's going to be a faster time in High Rocks in Rome at the end of September. I'll link the previous two episodes I've done on Dublin last year for the High Rocks and Turin in February if this is something you're interested in, because I went into a lot of detail on the mistakes I made, the training that I did, and some of the changes that I made to my training based on the feedback from the first race in Dublin coming into Turin, and then obviously now coming into Rome making further adjustments. At the end of January in 2026, I've got the Marrakesh Marathon in Morocco. So my training will drastically change as we come closer to that. So historically in the past, I've always done a run gym combo when it came to running. So you need to ask, well, what's the distance you're looking to cover? Are you looking to do a High Rocks race, which is going to be 8 kilometers total? Are you looking to do a 10K, a half marathon, a full marathon, an ultra marathon? So you're going to make the adjustments to your training accordingly. The rule of thumb is your training should reflect whatever outcome it is that you're looking to achieve. So for me, when I'm training for something that's a marathon distance, which is 26.2 miles, or an ultra marathon, anything over that distance, I tend to do a lot more running in my training and less gym work. And I tend to front load the gym work and then back load the running. And what that looks like is 3 months out from a race, I will be doing multiple gym sessions, normally 3, 4, 5 gym sessions, strength and conditioning or a push-pull leg split, and I'll be doing a baseline run that I'll be gradually increasing week on week, or I'll be increasing the speed for the same distance. If I'm trying to save the junk miles, I'm doing 20 kilometer runs, 30 kilometer runs that are just at a really, really low intensity. Again, nothing wrong with that. You can do that zone 2 style training. It works for a lot of people. I tend to do a lot more, I don't know what the opposite of junk miles is. Junk miles is when you're literally just going in and hitting the targets on the run, regardless of the intensity or regardless of how good the session is. I tend to do a lot of, say, fast 10Ks or fast 5Ks, even in marathon prep, because I'm a bigger athlete. I'm 85 kilos. I've got quite a lot of muscle. So for me, doing multiple weeks of 20 or multiple days of 20 kilometer runs, 25 kilometer runs, which you will see other runners or ultra athletes do, that just breaks down my body, my hips, my ankles, my knees, and it becomes an actual problem. I did a podcast a few months ago with my one-to-one client, Emmett, who was training for the marathon in full Garda uniform in Cork, and we have very, very similar builds. So in his training prep and in the advice I was giving him for his runs is that he doesn't have to go too far or too long, because we're bigger athletes. It's a lot of poundage on the joints. You want to maximize your training and optimize your training as much as possible. If you're 55 kilos and you don't have a lot of muscle, you're going to be able to do more runs, longer runs, and it's not going to have the same negative impact on your body. So you need to make the adjustments accordingly based on your starting point. When it comes to marathon prep or ultra marathon prep, then I tend to adjust my running and then reduce my gym workouts as I get closer to a race. So you'll see on my Instagram in November and December, I'll be doing a lot of gym-based work in November with a couple of fast runs, normally 5K, 10K max in the lead up to December. And then as December comes and rolls into January, I'll start tapering back the gym sessions and I'll be doing my runs alongside it. So an average week for me, which is pretty common when I'm training for marathons or ultras, is Monday is normally my long run. I normally go into the gym and I'll do a little bit of a pump workout for 10-15 minutes. I'll stretch and then I'll do a long run. So that's normally 15K, 20K, 25K, 30K plus, depending on what I've built up to. And again, I will increase that normally by 5K each week. So I'll start with 5K, week 2 I'll go to 10, week 3 I'll go to 15, week 4 I'll go to 20, etc. Not everybody can do that. I've got quite a decent base from my history in doing ultramarathons that I'm able to do it week on week now. You might want to go up by 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer based on your starting point. Then on Tuesday, I do a pull workout, which is normally back, biceps, rear delts for 15-20 minutes, and then I'll do a 10K. And again, what I do with that 10K on a Tuesday is I try and increase the speed week on week. So it's always going to be a 10K, but if I'm doing it in 52 minutes the first week, I'll try and do it in 51 the next. I'll try and do it in 50 the week after. I'll try and do it in 49 the week after. And then I kind of hit a plateau where I'm in and around that kind of 46, 47 minute mark, and I'm not able to break that without massively changing around my training session. But that's a good baseline for me. Wednesday then is normally a rest day. I'll do stretching, I'll do maybe some yoga, or I'll go in and do a recovery session in a sauna, ice, plunge pool, etc. Thursday then, I come back and do a strength and conditioning style workout. And there's normally a run in here as well. So a fast 5K or a slow, steady pace 10K. So it's a good strength and conditioning workout, working a lot of glutes, hamstrings, quads, core, variations of planks, variations of battle ropes, kettlebells, etc. And then a run, either a fast 5K or a slow 10K, depending on how my body's feeling. Then on Friday, I do a full body strength and conditioning workout. So that's where I'm hitting all the major muscle groups. They get shoulders, chest, core will get hit, quads, hamstring, glutes, calves, everything gets hit on that Friday session. Or if I'm feeling strong, it'll be a power-based workout. So I'll do power cleans, I'll do variations of deadlifts, etc. And then on Saturday, I do an interval style workout. So that's where the high rocks comes in. Funnily enough, with the high rock style training, this is how I've historically always trained on a Saturday when I was training for ultras. So it used to be anything from a 500 meter run to a kilometer run with workouts in between, or apologies, with exercises in between. So I would do a kilometer run, 3 sets of 10 on a chest press, kilometer run, 3 sets of 10 on a pull variations, a lat pull down or a barbell bent over row, etc. I do another kilometer run. I'll do variations of planks for a minute on each. I'll do a kilometer run, and then I'll go and do squats, or I'll do a bicep or tricep movement, and then I'll do a kilometer run after. And I try and do them quite quickly. So those workouts are normally about 45 to 60 minutes max, but they're very intense. My heart rate's very, very high. I feel very tired generally after, and then I have a rest day on Sunday. That's normally what my training split looks like when I'm building in runs. But again, your mileage may vary, pardon the pun, depending on your starting point. So that's quite a high load for the average person. But I, at this stage, know how my body responds. I'm able to do that without too much compromise, i.e. performance doesn't drop too much. It's strategic overreaching. So I did a popular podcast on my GA show, the GA Lean Body podcast, or the Lean Body podcast for GA players, about overtraining. And what you're looking to do is there's a spectrum for overtraining, and what you want to be in is what's called strategic overreaching. It's where your body's not quite at overtraining level, because if you hit overtraining, you're going to have a whole host of negative symptoms. You'll find your sleep is poor, your sex drive can drop, you can start to get sick very easily, your energy levels will be compromised. But strategic overreaching, you're right at that point where this is hard, it's pushing me to my limits, but it's not pushing me over. And then anything below that then is kind of just maintenance, which again, off the back of a race, I will normally do a maintenance month. So coming into September, I've got the High Rocks race at the end of September. October will be mostly a maintenance month for me. Going in, doing 45-minute sessions 4 to 5 times a week, and just kind of keeping things ticking over. And then in November, I'll ramp things up again for the gym, December and January will be very run based. I'll do the marathon at the end of January, and then February I'll back right off again. So that's generally how I approach races. It's normally what I recommend to people. The only thing that'll be different is obviously the tactics and the structural setup of your workouts. It'll be goal dependent, starting level dependent, etc. But that's some hopefully useful information to get you started. Question 2, any supplements to reduce cortisol from training? Short answer is yes. Long answer is yes, but with cortisol from training and cortisol in general, it's very important to know that your body understands stress regardless of where it's coming from. So if you're getting a cortisol response, there's a great book by Dr. Robert Sapolsky, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. It's a book on cortisol and stress, which I highly recommend. It's on my book recommendation list, actually, on the website, briankeanefitness.com. And what you want to have happen is you want to, if you think about cortisol like an energy bank, you want to be able to save your cortisol for your workouts and for your training so that you're able to push harder. This is the reason that if you're going through a breakup, if you're going through grief or loss of a loved one, if you're going through a job loss, your training intensity can drop because you're already in a mild chronic state of cortisol, i.e. your stress hormone is going to be naturally higher because you're going through a stressful time. What working out and training does is it further increases cortisol, and not all cortisol is created equal. I spoke about this in the last fitness book, The Keane Edge, Mastering the Mindset for Real Lasting Fat Loss, on the chapter on stress and cortisol, that there's cortisol, which is chronic, which you want to avoid. That's your poor relationships, that's hating the job, that's excessively putting yourself in front of, electromagnetic fields, dopamine, being on your phone all the time, or just eating a poor quality diet. There's a lot of things that can potentially affect cortisol and negatively impact your physiology. And you want to minimize that as much as possible. That's chronic cortisol, chronic stress. Acute cortisol is actually very beneficial for you. That's where training comes in. Training is an acute stressor. It's an acute short-term burst of cortisol that's very supportive. It's short-term stress to help with long-term stress. Heat exposure falls into this category as well. Cold exposure also falls into this category, where you're submitting, it's a hormetic response where you're putting your body into a stressful state temporarily to help you deal with long-term stress. But sometimes, as I mentioned, when you're going through a more difficult period or season of life, training can actually make that worse. So you have to be really mindful of this. There's a little bit of a Goldilocks zone with it, that life is really good, you're flying through, relationships are good, job is good, you feel happy and fulfilled. Your ability to train harder goes way up during that period. When you are going through a stressful time, your ability to train hard normally decreases. And in order to minimize that cortisol, you can look at your training and you can add a supplement in. But sometimes a supplement can be like a band-aid over a bleeding wound if there's an underlying issue elsewhere in your life. So look at your nutrition and nutritional choices, particularly post-workout, pre-workout, fueling the workout, recovering from the workout. Look at your sleep schedule. How high quality is your sleep? How many hours are you getting per night? What's your stress management like in terms of your day-to-day? Are you in a stressful relationship? Are you in a stressful job? Are you going through a stressful season of life because you're moving home or moving country? These all impact your cortisol. So you can get a supplement, and I will recommend one in a moment. I'll recommend several, but one that I particularly like. But if you don't fix these underlying issues, the supplement isn't going to help. So I just want to preface with that. The supplement I'm going to recommend here, which I really like, is ashwagandha. It's a herb that's well known as an adaptogen. So an adaptogen is something that allows your body to help with stress. Maca root is another personal favorite of mine, particularly for men because of the testosterone boosting elements in it. But it helps your body manage stress and can potentially lower cortisol levels. So some of the studies on this, and they're very, very good in terms of the ashwagandha studies. I spoke with Ben Coomer on the podcast several months ago, and we went through ashwagandha and some of the studies that are very, very strong in this. I also have an episode coming up with Laura Dowling, the fabulous pharmacist, and we talked about ashwagandha on there as well. And the study suggests that it can reduce cortisol by up to 30% if you take it regularly for 30 to 60 days, which is very, very good. But as I mentioned, it can be a band-aid on a bleeding wound. You don't want to just go with a supplement and assume it's going to fix all of your problems. But if you are somebody that's just looking to improve your recovery overall, reduce cortisol from training, it can be a useful supplement to add into your routine. But just be mindful, it's not a panacea, it's not a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet supplement. There are supplements that will supplement what you're missing in your nutrition. There's supplements that will supplement your lifestyle, but there's nothing that's going to fix it as a magic wand. So just be mindful of that before you go out and purchase it. Question 3, how do you know the cardio you're doing is quote unquote enough? This depends on your goal. So they recommended, if you look at the World Health Organization website, the recommended amount is in and around 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity exercise or 75 minutes of high intensity exercise over a 7-day period. So what that looks like is, your step counts, your moderate activity, moving more, walking, jogging, cycling, they're all adding up to your 150 minutes. Your 75 minutes might be your circuit training, your Tabata, your HIIT workouts. That's the recommended amount for health. Now, one thing that's worth noting here, same as sleep recommendations, same as any recommendation really, is it depends on you and your starting point. So if you're looking for the minimum effective dose of cardiovascular activity for overall health, you're going to be in and around that ballpark number of 150 minutes per week of moderate to low intensity exercise or 75 minutes of high intensity exercise. But if your goal is something else, i.e. reducing body fat, losing weight, changing body composition, how you know if you're doing enough then depends on how your body is responding to that cardiovascular activity. Now, I'll break both up here because muscle building and fat loss are two different goals. They're body composition goals, they're body recomposition goals, but they're completely different approaches. To lose body fat, it's a lot more of a straightforward process. It's calorie control for the most part. It's minimizing stress. It's sleeping well so that you can adhere to your diet over an extended period of time, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks. You can get a very good response. You'll see some of the Keane Edge testimonies on the website from people who have got great results over a 6-week period because weight loss or fat loss was their goal. It's very, very easy. Let me rephrase. It's very straightforward to control someone's nutrition, increase their output with their training, cardiovascular activity, weight training to increase their metabolic rate so they're burning more calories while they're resting, etc. It's very, very straightforward. Building muscle, on the other hand, takes considerably more time. So if you were actually trying to bulk up, if you're trying to put on size, you need to give yourself a longer window of time. What you would normally achieve in a fat loss period of 6 weeks might take 6 months, depending on genetics for building muscle. So the amount of cardio that you're looking to do will be based on the goal. If you're looking to build muscle, you're looking at the lower end of the range, that 150 minutes, as I mentioned, that 75 minutes of high intensity, just to maintain healthy levels and a healthy body while you're building muscle. With fat loss, it can be very tempting to increase the cardio so that you end up getting to your goal faster. And I'm not necessarily saying you shouldn't do that. There's a misconception when it comes to cardio where people will say cardio burns fat. Cardio doesn't burn fat, cardio doesn't lose weight. What cardio does is it burns calories, and burning calories can support a deficit where your body is tapping into stored fat and using it for fuel. That's again, sounds like a similar thing, but it's completely different. So you're not doing cardio and then you lose body fat. That's why people will hop on a cross trainer for 50 minutes, multiple times a week, and they're like, I'm not losing weight, I'm not losing body fat. That's because calories are still too high. Nutrition still hasn't been fixed. And if you don't fix the underlying issue, and what normally happens with cardio is people get hungrier, and when they're hungrier, they end up eating more food, and then their calories just either maintain or sometimes their body fat can go up because they're hungrier now, and they're not necessarily eating supportive foods that can help them with the body composition that they want. So cardio doesn't always equal fat loss. Cardio doesn't always equal weight loss. Also two different goals. Fat loss is reducing the adipose tissue fat on your body. Weight loss is reducing the numbers or lowering the numbers on a scale. Two different goals as well. But again, I'll use them interchangeably here just for the context of this answer. So what you're looking to do is align your overall plan with whatever your goal is. So if you're looking to lose, let's say 10 pounds, you want to lose 10 pounds or you want to lose a bit of body fat so you can fit into your favorite dress, your favorite t-shirt, your favorite pair of jeans, or you just want to feel more confident with or without clothes. You're going to look at your nutrition first because fat loss is determined by your nutrition. And you don't actually have to exercise at all to lose body fat. You need to exercise for health. You need to exercise for metabolic health overall. You need to exercise for getting fitter. You need to exercise for building muscle. You need to create resistance on the body so that you're able to break down and tear down muscle fibers so you can grow them back stronger. But for fat loss, you actually don't need to exercise at all. You just need to control your nutrition. You need to get into a calorie deficit, ideally with nutrient-dense foods that supports that deficit and makes it feel easier for you to adhere because you're not hungry, you're not moody, you're not reducing your NEAT activity, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis by dropping calories too low, where you're not moving around a lot because you're tired all the time. That's what you need to do for a fat loss goal. What cardio can do is it supports that because it burns more calories. But something that gets slept on a lot is the resistance training and the weight training that you need to do for fat reduction and for fat loss. What weight training does, what resistance training does, is it increases your metabolic rate. So it means that your metabolism boosts, it elevates, you burn more calories while you're resting. That's the long-term approach for fat loss. There's a very popular, very clickbaity chapter in my first book, The Fitness Mindset, that burn fat while you watch TV. And that's where I'm talking about increasing your metabolism with weight training, increasing your metabolism resistance training so that you're sitting watching something on Netflix and your body is still burning calories trying to repair from that workout. It's the calorie burning equivalent of making money while you sleep when you do resistance and weight training. So you want to make sure you incorporate that into your program, and then your cardio will be depending on, well, what are you looking to do? Rule of thumb, I've always done this in programs with people over the last decade and a half or so, is if your calories are higher, you can do more high intensity interval training, i.e. your HIIT, H-I-I-T, because you're supporting the workouts and the intensity required to get a better bang for your buck. It's also very good, and high intensity has been shown to be better for muscle preservation. So if you're looking to keep your metabolism high, you don't want to be doing hours and hours and endless hours of cardio, because that can potentially reduce your metabolism because of the output element, the stress element of constantly putting your body into this movement pattern, when actually high intensity interval training is, 10 minutes, even 5 minutes in some cases, or 4 minutes if you're doing Tabata, which is 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, a very popular high intensity interval strategy. It means you're not spending hours in the gym and you're burning a lot of calories during those sessions. And if you're supporting that with your nutrition, either keeping calories a bit higher or keeping them a little bit more higher carb based, you're going to be able to push hard during those sprints. So if you're doing 30-second sprint on a bike and a 30-second recovery 5 times or 10 times, you want to be going flat out for those 30 seconds. You're working at an RPE of 9 or a 10. So an RPE scale is the rate of perceived exertion. So 1 is like rolling out of bed, 10 is a flat out sprint. You want to be working at like a 9 or a 10 for high intensity interval training. If your calories are too low, you generally don't have the required fuel to do that. So that's where your low intensity comes in really well. If you ever see bodybuilders or bikini competitors in the gym doing 40, 50, 60 minutes on a Stairmaster or a cross trainer, that's normally because they're very calorie depleted. They don't have the energy levels to push a high intensity session, so they have to do the low intensity. It also helps because it taps into stored fat. When you get your heart rate at a specific percentage, it means you're able to tap into fat and use that for fuel. But there's so many variables going on with that. That's normally in the calorie control plan when you've got high protein, and that's why you will have what I call the gym plateauers, the people who go in and do 4 sessions a week on the cross trainer and they never look any different. They always look the same. That's because they're not stressing the body, they're not giving it enough change, and they're not looking at the big rocks, the nutrition, the sleep, the recovery, the weight training that's actually going to support that fat loss that they're looking to achieve. So how do you know if you're doing enough cardio? It depends on your goal. If you're looking to lose body fat, look at the other bigger rocks first, your weight training, and then add your cardio in on top of it. If you're looking to build muscle, you're looking for an MED, a minimum effective dose, and how much cardio you need to stay healthy as you're building muscle. And if you're looking to just maintain the World Health Organization standards, you're looking at that 150 minutes of moderate to low intensity exercise or 75 minutes of high intensity exercise over a 7-day period. Question 4, ab training for when you're in a deficit or just focus on diet? Again, very similar to the last question, it comes down to your goals. I get the whole theory of not training abs until you're lean enough to see them. And it really comes down to opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is an economics term where you go into the shop and you've got €2 and you can either buy a can of Coke or you can buy a packet of crisps, but you can't spend that same €2 twice. It's opportunity cost. A lot of fitness and exercise choices comes down to opportunity cost. It's not the ab training itself that's the problem. It's what you could be doing in its place that would give you a better bang for your buck or help get you to your goal faster. So what I'd say here is, if you are looking to get your abs to show, male, female, etc., it doesn't matter what your gender is, if you're looking to get your abs to show, you're not going to be able to see them until body fat gets low enough anyways. So if you are doing ab training in place of compound lifts like your squats, your deadlifts, even barbell thrusters where you combine a front squat with an overhead press, a great fat burning exercise. If you're doing ab training instead, then you would get more results and faster results doing the compound lifts. The multi-joint exercises are going to recruit multiple muscle groups. They'll also recruit your core, especially things like squats and deadlifts, because you need a strong core to be able to perform those movement patterns. If you're doing them instead, it's probably going to be a waste of time in comparison. But if you are doing them in addition, i.e. at the end of your session, it's not going to do any harm. It just means that you're going to have a little bit more strength, probably a little bit more shape in that region as your body fat comes down. But if you are in a calorie deficit and you're looking to get your abs to show, it's just about getting your body fat low enough. About 80% of people have abs. They're underneath layers of fat. Not everybody. Some people genetically actually have to train them, where you're doing ab specific workouts. I've had probably 10, maybe 11 clients over the years in variations or various programs who genetically didn't have abs when their body fat got low enough. So we had to train them. They had to do oblique style workouts. We did weighted exercise, body weight exercise, and we actually trained that muscle group so that there was more definition and more split in the abs. But most people, especially if you have a background in sport or you have a background in lifting weights, you probably have a decent ab structure underneath, even genetically, working in your favor. So just getting body fat low enough with your nutrition will show those abs. But as I said, whether you want to include them in your training, if you're doing it in addition to your normal workout and you've still got all your big rocks, i.e. your compound lifts, your weight training, your high intensity cardio, if that's what you're doing, and then you're doing your ab training, it's not going to do any harm. But if you're doing it as a replacement for those better exercise choices that will support getting body fat down faster, then you're probably going to be wasting your time. So I would just keep that in mind and then, course correct accordingly, depending on, where your starting point or what you're doing currently. Question 5, can you explain having a different physique at the same weight last year versus this year? Yes, I can explain it quite easily. That's body recomposition. So what happens when you are staying the same weight? Sometimes lean muscle tissue can go up and body fat can come down, or the reverse actually, where body fat goes up and lean muscle tissue goes down, but you still stay the same weight. This is very, very common. And the way that you work through this is getting clear on what your goal is on the front end. And one of the things that I've tried to educate people on with this podcast, in books, particularly the fitness book, The Fitness Mindset, The Keane Edge, I've tried to educate the difference between weight loss and fat loss, because weight loss is lowering numbers on a scale and it doesn't necessarily reflect how good you look. Reducing body fat in nearly everybody means you're going to look better. Not in all cases. Some people are very, very lean to start with, and reducing body fat doesn't necessarily make them look better. But for somebody that's carrying extra body fat, reducing it down normally makes them look a lot better, and they normally feel a lot better alongside that to coincide with it. But it doesn't always work to your advantage to just focus on weight loss, because what weight loss can do is, if you are losing lean muscle tissue and you're gaining body fat, weight might stay the same, but you don't look as good. The same on the flip side of that is, if lean muscle tissue is going up, i.e. your resistance training, your strength training, you're eating enough protein, you're sleeping well, your metabolic rate is high because of that, but your body fat is coming down, you might step on the scale and weigh exactly the same. Very, very common. Something that, and I do this on the front end, the Keane Edge program is my group coaching program, where I tell people it's a fat loss program, not a weight loss program. Now, I'll put an asterisk with that. There are individuals who come into that who have a lot of weight to lose, and they do lose the weight, but it comes in conjunction and coincides alongside the fat loss reduction. But the focus is always on fat loss, because it's getting the amount of fat down in your body. It's very common to have a different physique, to look at a photo from last year versus this year and be the same weight but look completely different. Sometimes positive, as I mentioned, sometimes negative, depending on the body composition change. But that's the reason for it. So get clear on the front end. What's your goal? Are you looking to lose weight? And some people should lose weight. Someone in an obese category, somebody who's very overweight, where you can't even track the body fat because it's so high, you're better off doing weight. That's who I'd recommend track weight. Or competitive athletes who have to weigh in at a specific time and date. You do jiu-jitsu, you compete in bodybuilding, you compete in wrestling, you compete in something that you need to be 60 kilos for or 80 kilos for on a specific day. Yes, you need to focus on weight, but weight's very easy to manipulate. You can manipulate weight with glycogen depletion, by reducing carbohydrate, by loading water and then reducing it, by using things like dandelion root and vitamin C to get the excess water out of your body. You can manipulate weight very quickly, actually over the space of a day or two, versus body fat, which takes longer. And that's why I never tell people to worry about a fluctuating weight on a day-to-day scale. If you are hopping on a scale every single day and the weight's going up and down slightly, particularly if you're female and you've got your menstrual cycle where you're going to weigh different amounts during the month, depending on water retention, depending on bloat, that's a legit thing to be aware of, because it leads to this downfall or snowball effect of mindset going, oh, I'm doing everything right, but I'm still not losing the weight, when in reality it's going to be your period next month, and that's why your weight is up. So that's why you have to track your photos or track your body fat measurements, whether it's with calipers or whether it's with measuring tape. But photos, clothes, they tell 1,000 words. That old cliche that a photo says 1,000 words is so true with body composition. So taking your photos, tracking your progress, seeing how your clothes are fitting, that's a better indicator of body fat reduction. If you were struggling to fit into a pair of jeans this time last year and now they're hanging off you and you need a belt, that's a good sign that body fat has came down over that period of time. So it's not just about using the weighing scale, it's a tool. Some people should use that tool as their primary method, but I would say 70-80% of people probably shouldn't. They should be tracking with photos, tracking with body fat, whether it's a DEXA scanner if you can afford it, or whether with measures, i.e. measuring your chest, your arms, your legs, your waist, and potentially body fat calipers if you have them, or you know somebody locally who's able to do it. There's also a lot of in-body scanners in gyms. Some of them are accurate. Mileage varies on those. Some of them are very inaccurate. But again, not using the scale as your primary source is the main takeaway here. Question 6, sugar cravings during the day. Any suggestions with how to deal with this? Yes. So there's two approaches that are popular here. One is fixing the source or the root of the problem, and the other is symptom management. Symptom management for sugar cravings is having something that ideally fits within your calorie targets. If you're on a fat loss goal, for example, that curbs the sugar craving. For some, it's going to be a piece of fruit, an apple, banana. For others, it'll be something sweet like a protein bar, where it's just basically a chocolate bar with 20 grams of protein, but there's a higher satiation effect because of the 20 grams of protein. That's symptom management. In most cases, I would always look at the root problem. Sugar cravings are a feedback that something is off elsewhere. You're not supposed to have sugar cravings during the day. In a lot of cases, it tends to be a blood sugar issue. I had actually one of my one-to-one girls recently who had this before she started, where she would get these intense sugar cravings. For her, it was in the evening, but she was fasting all day, not intentional fasting. It was very, very busy, running around, working, lots of kids, lots of stuff going on. And then she'd have dinner and then she'd just be ready to like rip the cupboards open for sugar cravings in the evening. That was a blood sugar issue, meaning that her blood sugar levels were like a roller coaster. They were eating breakfast, blood sugar was rising, and then it was dipping as the day went on. And then she would have something for dinner. And then she was ready, as I mentioned, to rip the cupboard off for something sweet after. That was just about balancing her blood sugar levels. You don't want this roller coaster going up and down during the day. And for her, it was as simple as adding in a couple of meals or snacks through the day so that she wasn't going large periods fasting. Fasting protocols have their time, they have their place, they work really well for some people, but they need to be intentional. It's a very unusual approach or a unsupportive approach when it happens by accident for most people because of that blood sugar imbalance, especially unless you are somebody like an ultra endurance athlete who's trying to become more fat adapted and you're intentionally fasting and making your body burn through fat for fuel, but you're doing that intentionally. When it happens by accident, it tends to just be unsupportive for most people. So what I'd say here is look at your overall nutrition. Are you going long periods during the day where you're not eating? Or Are you making unsupportive food choices, i.e. you're riding a blood sugar roller coaster because your protein's not high enough, or your fiber is not high enough, or you're eating too many processed foods? Again, a very, very common issue. If someone is skipping breakfast or having a low quality breakfast, they normally get really bad sugar cravings during the day. So if you are skipping breakfast and it's not intentional, you're just really, really busy, you're running out the door, there's a good chance sugar cravings from that blood sugar drop is going to be high during the day. On the flip side of that, you'll also find if you're having a poor quality food choice. So the obvious one here in Irish and UK households is, a slice of toast. Grabbing a slice of toast and out the door, where you're getting a little bit of a blood sugar spike from the toast, and then it's dipping as the day goes on, mid-morning, and then by the middle of the day, even if you've had a good food choice at lunchtime, you're going to be craving something sugary later on in the day. Very, very easy fix. Have a protein source in the morning or a good fiber source, or ideally a combination of both, and that's going to fix that issue very, very quickly. Meal timings are the other thing I would consider here. So if you are keeping your blood sugar levels stable, you're having a breakfast, you're having a snack, you're having a lunch, you're having a snack, you're having dinner, potentially a snack after, and you're eating regularly through the day, that's going to curb a lot of these sugar cravings. One of the testimonies you'll see from the Keane program, and this comes up very regularly, where people are going, I can't believe I got to eat so much food and lose so much body fat. That's a very common feedback, because the way I approach it as a coach and professionally in programs with people is not dropping calories too high. Anybody can drop calories to 1,200 calories, lower than what an 8-year-old girl needs on a daily basis. Anybody can do that. Anyone can do it themselves. Any coach can do that. It's not supportive, because it does lead, if you can adhere to it, to weight loss, and normally leads to a rebound out the other side. That's what happens in most cases, because it's not sustainable for the majority of people. Unless you're 35 kilo female who's not very active, you're not going to be able to maintain on that over a large period of time. There's some, what they'll do is strategic refeed. I've actually got one of my girls who eats in and around the 1,300 calorie mark every day, and then she has a strategic refeed at the weekend. So we balance out the calories over 7 days. So she has an 1,800 calorie to a 2,000 calorie on Saturdays and Sundays, which balances out her calories over the week. You don't have to do it right and get it correct every single day. You can look at calories by zooming out and asking, okay, what am I doing over the week? In the Keane I talk about this. It's called calorie banking, where you're going lower Monday to Friday because you want to have more of a flexible approach at the weekend. I actually do this with people in the Keane program as well, where they have that flexible nutrition option, where they're able to be a lot stricter Monday to Friday because they have routine, and then they're able to be a lot looser with it without taking the piss completely coming into the weekend. So they've got this sustainable approach that works for them long after a 6-week period. So you're looking to find the tool that fits the job, or you're looking to find the tool that's going to support you in this scenario, whether that's banking calories, whether that's meal timings, having your breakfast, lunch, and dinner with snacks in between, whether that's changing up your food choices so that they're higher protein, higher fiber. You're looking to kind of figure out where the issue is coming from. Once you're able to do that, you're going to find the sugar cravings disappear. I have no issue with people having a chocolate bar that I work with in a program. No issue. And for a lot of people, psychologically, even metabolically in some cases, it keeps people on plan and keeps people on the program, but because they want to have it, not because they need to have it. There's a big, big difference there. I have a piece of chocolate every single day because I love chocolate. I don't have a sweet tooth. I have sweet teeth. If I didn't have it, I'd be walking around a lot more miserable, and as opposed to being kind of happy and joyful going about my day. But it's because I want it. It's not because I haven't slept well and my ghrelin and leptin and hunger and satiation hormones are completely thrown out of whack, which is another thing that I haven't gone into detail here, but something to consider. It's not because I've gone long periods without eating and my blood sugars have dropped. It's because I like chocolate and I want to have it in my program, but I don't have to have 10 bars. I don't have to. Once upon a time I did. I've talked about this on older podcasts. That binge restrict cycle was a really prominent part of my nutritional philosophy, unintentionally, where I would go really strict eating for a week, 2 weeks, and then I would binge for a weekend or binge for a week, and then I'd go right back to zero, sometimes back worse than when I started. But again, that's the binge restrict cycle, a completely different thing. Generally not always required that you need professional help with that, but minimally listening to conversations. I've done several on the podcast. If you Google Brian Keane Fitness binging or binge, it'll bring up all those episodes. You need to arm yourself with the awareness of, okay, what's happening to me? what's my triggers, what are my activations for this, what are my patterns, my habits that are leading to this restrict cycle. But again, sugar cravings are a slightly different thing, so I don't want to go too far down the binge restrict cycle for a question on sugar cravings. But look at that, look at your nutrition, look at your blood sugars, look at your food choices, look at your sleep quality, make sure they're all in alignment, and sugar cravings are normally something that go away. Last question, question 7. Brian, I'm struggling to hit my daily fat target, fall short by at least 30 grams per day. Any tips? Yeah, I've got a few tips here that can be useful. One is food swaps, where you swap out your leaner meats for higher fat alternatives. So easy rule of thumb here would be chicken or turkey. If you eat chicken or turkey, swap it out for oily fish or even red meat if you enjoy that, lamb, beef, etc. Again, calories are going to be a little bit higher, obviously, because of the increased fat, but it's an easy way to bump up the fat intake. This is something I do with people who are looking to bulk up and add size. We, instead of going with chicken and turkey in their major meals, we'll have oily fish or we'll have red meat, because again, it's the same quantity of food, but the calories are a lot higher because of the fat. That's one option. The second is putting in fats that don't feel like you've increased the fat. And that tip here is where you're using things like oils, either cooking in oils or adding them to your meals that are bumping up the calories, bumping up the fat. A very quick example of this would be something like olive oil, adding olive oil to your meals. So if you've got a, let's say broccoli and chicken meal, and you add a tablespoon or two of olive oil, you're going to bump up the calories by 130 to 260 calories straight away there, which is going to bump the fat as well, but you're not eating any more food. Again, this is a tip I normally use with quote unquote hard gainers, people who struggle with appetite but are looking to put on size. It's adding calories, adding fat without increasing the quantity of food. That's another tip to get your fats up. And then the last one is experimenting on different fat sources that you might like. There are lots of good healthy fats out there. Olive oil, coconut oil, avocados, guacamole, for example, your nut butters, natural peanut butter, natural almond butter, assuming you've no nut allergy. Easy ways and tasty ways to bump up the fat in meals. And what's so good about fat is you don't need an awful lot of it. There's 9 kilocalories per gram of fat, so you don't actually have to eat that much of it to bump it up by 30 grams. For example, there's 4 kilocalories per gram of protein, there's 4 kilocalories per gram of carbohydrate, so you have to eat an awful lot more to bump the calories up. But for fat, you don't have to actually eat that much to get the 30 grams up. So it's just a case of finding what's going to work best for you. Is it going to be food swaps? Is it going to be finding fat alternative meals that you prefer? Is it going to be adding the fats that don't increase the quantity of food but increase the nutritional density of the meal, i.e. your fat intake is going to go up, the calorie intake will go up. So there's 3 tips. I would experiment with whichever one jumps out at you the most, and whatever it is that's supporting you the most, I would just double down, so that if you're tracking your calories with MyFitnessPal or whatever app you're using, it's a very easy way to potentially bump it by 30 grams. And now, final question. Apologies, I thought the last one was the final question. This is the final question. Would an intuitive approach or calorie-centered approach work best for clients? So I'm not sure if you're asking this as what I do professionally, or if you're asking as a coach who works with people. So I'll answer it both, because there's a bit of overlap here. My approach as a coach has always been whatever works better for the client. So in the Keane Edge program, there's 3 options for nutrition. One is a set and forget it program. It's all your calories, all your macros, all your foods done for you. You literally just plug it into MyFitnessPal, which links with the app, and you can do it exactly as it is. No thinking, plug it in, nearly guarantees results. The second option is what I call the food freedom option. It's where you get recipes, and there's 52 recipes in the Keane Edge program, and you literally just pick your favorite ones each day as you go along. This works really well for families, for people who are cooking for multiple people, and there's a lot more freedom in that approach. The last one then is the calorie macro approach, where they get the calories and macros, and then you basically just put in your favorite foods to hit those targets each day. In the Keane Edge program, there's all those 3 options, because people tend to fall into one of those 3. You have those who are like, actually, I don't want to even think about this. I just want to lose body fat. I want to hit my end goal or build muscle, whatever it is. Just tell me what I need to eat. Bang. That's option 1. The second is, as I mentioned, someone that's, wants more food freedom, maybe have a history of disordered eating patterns, and they want that freedom back so that they're not always thinking about food. Or as I mentioned, you're prepping one meal for multiple people. That's going to be a better option. And then the third is those who are like, actually, I've got a good knowledge on nutrition already. I just need my calories and my macros based on my goal. I'll fill in my favorite foods around it. It also works really well for fussy eaters. So that tends to work really, really well for the majority of people. If you're a coach, and in my Circle program, which is my group business coaching, I'll actually put that link for the description below as well. If you're a personal trainer or a coach and you want to work with me, we've got our first meetup. We're recording this in August. First meetup is in September, and that link will be in the description below. You can check out the details. But what I recommend with people I'm working with as coaches is always work to the client. Always work to what's going to be best for them for multiple reasons. One, adherence will be higher. If you are letting them and making them or working with them, they're going to get better results, which makes sense for everybody. You get a better result as the coach, they get a better result as the client. It's win-win all around. If you are trying to make a round peg fit into a square hole, i.e. you have an approach that you take as a coach and you try and fit the client into that, you're going to get a breakdown there. You'll get those who, for whatever reason, won't share with you that they're going off plan. They will be afraid to communicate with you because you've told them to do one thing and they're doing something else, and it breaks down the relationship and the communication. And as a result, clients don't get the best results with that. And ultimately, we're in potentially the best job in the world as coaches, personal trainers. We get to help people with their fitness, help people with their health, help people feel more confident. It's an amazing job to be in, but you have to be able to move to what that client needs. And if you're listening to this and you're working with a coach who insists on only doing it one way, especially if you have a non-extreme goal, i.e. weight loss isn't an extreme goal, body composition isn't an extreme goal. There's so many ways to hit that goal. Coaches should be armed with the knowledge to make adjustments as they go along. If you want to be an Olympic athlete, you want to win a gold medal, you want to be a professional athlete, you want to be on a bodybuilding stage, yeah, you might have to just go with what the coach is saying because the goal is extreme, the approach needs to be extreme. But for non-extreme goals, there's so many different ways to hit it. So whether you take an intuitive approach, again, our calorie-centered approach, you're looking to use what the client is working best. I've always thought, I actually haven't really changed my mind on this because I think 12, 13 years of experience has kind of given me this outlook that those who are already relatively healthy and fit to begin with can take a more intuitive approach. They normally have a good intuition on their body. Somebody that had a poor food relationship or has been yo-yo dieting for years cannot start with an intuitive approach. They don't have the intuition yet. Intuition is a skill you learn when it comes to food, and you need to hone that with them, where you're using calorie-centered approach or nutrient-dense-centered approach to begin, and then as their education, their awareness of their body, how they respond with certain foods improves, they can start to do a more intuitive approach. Again, that's just my professional opinion on this. I think it is probably true for the majority of people. So again, no one size fits all. That's the crux of it. But whether you should use an intuitive approach or calorie-centered approach, it depends on the client. It depends on what they need. Somebody that I had Michelle on this podcast who was in my one-to-one online coaching program. Michelle was a physique competitor looking to get food freedom back. So we didn't go with a calorie-centered approach for her. We used it at the beginning because it's what she was familiar with. And then we started to do a more intuitive-based approach. When are you hungry? What's your body craving now? Listening to those intuitive cues. I've had other people who I've worked with who have been yo-yo dieting for years, and that intuition just isn't honed yet. So it takes longer for them to get to that point. So again, the starting point matters massively here on what you do as an individual or what you do as a coach potentially working with clients. That's all the questions from today's podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know if you enjoyed today's podcast. Leave a rating and a review. I haven't asked for that in ages, and I meant to. Again, it helps massively with the growth of the show, allows me to bring on other great guests. I've got some belting episodes coming up over the coming weeks and months, so make sure you're subscribed and hitting that follow button. And today's podcast, as I mentioned, was sponsored by my Keane Edge Group Coaching Program. If you think I'd be a good fit for you as a coach, you want to work in that challenge for 6 weeks, everything that I've talked through in this episode and at the beginning, the link will be in the description below. That's everything from me from this week's podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you next Monday.